Hello and welcome, my little goblins. Ah, what an excellent day for an exorcism. I'm your host, Kira Aster, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host. Listen to her, a child of the night. What sweet music she makes. Here's Raven. Hello, Raven, how are you?
Good evening.
Yes! How you doing?
I am good. I'm living my best fall vampire life. I know that it's usually summertime here in San Francisco, but it's been a beautiful kind of moody fall cloudy day. The fog is rolling in. I'm in the mood for spooky horror fun. I'm happy to be here to talk about all things horror with you.
Oh my god, I'm so excited. Like, I felt like this is what my life is leading up to. My love of horror, surrounded by pumpkin goodies, with a mic, with one of my best friends in the world. I'm like so pumped. Let's go. But before
Aww.
we intro our topic for horror, why we chose horror, why it's relevant, let's quickly cover social media for the folks, how they can reach out to us and tell us their thoughts.
Yes. What did you think of Halloween Ends? Do you think Freddy would win against a fight with Jason? Comment on our videos that we post on our YouTube channel, Full Screen Podcast. You can also post all of your thoughts about our podcast on our Instagram and Twitter feeds at Full Screen Pod. We don't screen comments, so don't use it as a free for all to get nasty, but get the right kind of nasty, if you know what we mean. We also have our email, fullyscreened@gmail.com. If you would like to send us dirty limericks, poems, or your general thoughts about the state of streaming in tech today, topics you'd like to see us cover. Or talk to us about, those weird, creepy dreams you've been having that wake you up at 3 a.m. every night. Like, we love hearing spooky shit.
Listen, do they have to be creepy or you know what I mean?
I
There's
think
all
we're in
kinds.
the creepy season. So, yeah, once it's November, it's like, done. Your dreams have to be about turkey now.
Mm, good dreams. I am hungry. Wonderful. Yes, tell us your thoughts. We are very excited to know them. On to the topic. Okay, so horror. Webster's dictionary defines horror as.
No, no, no,
No, I'm
no, no,
kidding.
no,
I
no,
won't.
no, no, no,
No,
no,
no, no.
no.
We're not going there.
What is this? Your best man speech at like
Right?
a horror wedding or something?
Incredible. With that, horror, guys, this is I would say, peak time for horror. Just in general, not even this October. This is peak horror time that we're living in. And we've seen, just this year, we've seen so many movies, right? Hellbender by John Adams, Zelda Adams, Toby Poser, Barbarian that just came out by Zach Kreger, X by Ty West, Pearl by Ty West. He's spinning up his own Mia Gothverse, which, incredible. I'm here for it. Smile by Parker Finn, not to mention The Black Phone, Scott Derrickson, Nope by Jordan Peele. We're just blessed with all of this horror content. But why is this? Why so many, right? For one, it's an incredibly profitable genre. According to American Film Market, horror films are considered to be the most profitable genre as they project a really high return on investment. That ROI, baby.
Yeah, it's all about the money.
Yeah, low cost, great returns, puts butts in seats, puts butts on couches. It's a great return. In comparison to other genres, especially drama, we get a lot of drama, right? Only less than 1/3 of drama movies actually return a profit, which is incredible to actually compare with horror. And with all of these titles that I just mentioned, there we are sort of experiencing a sort of resurgence with, prestige horror becoming a thing. As we mentioned, Jordan Peele, not Robert Peele. But speaking of Robert Eggers, Ari Aster are big names in prestige horror as well. And then behind the camera, we've seen Jason Blum with Blumhouse Productions, just churning out that
Oh
amazing
yeah.
content.
He's made horror like his own cottage industry. It's crazy.
And like good horror, right? Like the shorts on Amazon Prime and
He's
the
definitely
Welcome to the
got the most
Blumhouse.
variety, which I think means there is a little unevenness in the quality. He's made Truth or Dare and Unfriended, but he's also made Get Out. So I think
Yeah.
he's just a big horror fan and he understands that there's different genres of horror within like the broader spectrum of it, and he is also known for, like you said, quick return on investment, really low cost production. They shoot these
Yes.
things in like a really tight schedule and then they make a ton of money because horror is super easy to understand as a concept for everybody, you know? It's like a lot of universal things scare people, so it's like a very broad net to cast for your audience to come in and enjoy themselves, and Jason Blum knows that.
Yes. And as a great producing mind, he also knows how iteration works. So if one movie fails the next year, he's gonna, take on the
Yes.
feedback, and he's great. Speaking of products, guys. Um so streaming space, right? With all of this, streaming space has been trying to get in on this a bunch very recently. And today we're going to talk about one of the modern kings of horror, especially on streaming, Mike Flanagan. His new series, The Midnight Club, just dropped on Netflix. And what better way to talk about horror content than to talk about Flanagan's style, his story structure, what our favorite story of his might be. And then we'll do a quick analysis on horror focused streaming services. There aren't that many, but there's two that have stood out in recent years, Screambox and
Risen to the
Shudder.
top. Yeah.
Yep. And we're going to talk about Screambox and Shudder, going into their history, sort of doing an analysis of these apps, talking about the content, catalog, feature comparisons, all that stuff. All right, let's get started. And remember, we see dead people. Welcome into the multiplying genre. Today, we're going to give our love and shine and all our admiration to the art form of bone-chilling screams, jump scares, and exorcisms gone wrong. Today, we highlight one name in particular, our modern horror streaming king, Mike Flanagan. Now, before we get started, we will likely have spoilers for, well, all of Mike Flanagan's works, except the new series Midnight Club, which we have not finished yet, but there might be few mentions of at least the first few episodes. So if you wish to skip, don't get some things spoiled for you. We will have timestamps, do not worry, so you can skip to the next section.
Careful. Spoilers ahead.
All right, let's go. So, Mike Flanagan, the creator behind films such as 2013's Oculus, one of my personal favorites, 2016's Hush and Ouija Origin of Evil, 2017's Gerald's Game, and 2019's Doctor Sleep, starring the love of my life, Jedi Master Obi-Wan.
Oh boy. Yeah, let's keep on time. We don't have 15 minutes to go into how beautiful
God,
Obi-Wan
it was
Kenobi
so
looks.
beautiful. Okay, Mike Flanagan. So Mike Flanagan made himself a household name, I would say, with the Netflix TV shows that have come out in recent years, right? 2018's The Haunting of Hill House, based on the 1959 novel by Shirley Jackson. 2020's The Haunting of Bly Manor. 1898 novel The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. 2021's Midnight Mass, which I believe is an original work. And what just came out, as we mentioned, The Midnight Club, based on 1994 book by Christopher Pike. And we already have the next one lined up for next year, The Fall of the House of Usher, based on a short story
By
by
my
Edgar
dead
Allan Poe.
boyfriend.
Yes, yes. Just casual name, Edgar Allan Poe. So, right, Netflix is thriving with this Flanagan verse that they're spinning up. And so ratings wise, Flanagan's content have really garnered critical and popular acclaim both. And if you've listened to our episode 2 focused on ratings platforms, if you haven't, go pause this, listen to that one, and then come back. You know that we don't pay much attention to ratings really because very problematic, especially Rotten Tomatoes. But just to put some perspective on this, all of his TV shows have garnered above an 85% score, and most of his movies are above an 80% as well, which is, if you know horror, that is very rare.
Yeah. And his work is an antithesis of like all of the horror that had come before. There's an explicit disdain of jump scares in Midnight Club. And I feel like jump scares has been like the staple of a lot of horror movies. And he specifically, through a character within the show, says that it's cheap and that the real terror comes from lingering. And I think
Yes.
that it's not only a good way to call back to like the type of horror that we saw in the beginning of the century with like the horror movies from the 1920s and 30s. It's very atmospheric and creepy. And he's bringing a lot of like a whole new generation to appreciating that kind of art form, like ones that may have only grown up with jump scare movies and stuff. And he's like letting people into wading their way into the waters of like slow, moody, atmospheric, creepy horror and not
Yeah.
being immediately turned off or saying, this is boring, nothing is happening. He's like allowing us to grow patience for
Yes.
horror.
Yes, and we're going to talk about it all, but that's very important to his style. For Oculus, LA Times wrote, I love this quote, less concerned with fake shocks and show me violence than the grimly calibrated rotting of personalities, Oculus is one of the more intelligently nasty horror films in recent memory. The Telegraph called The Haunting of Hill House the most complex and complete horror series of its time, and the AV Club calls the recent release of Midnight Club a sprawling meditation on mortality. Yep. All right, so what's really driving Flanagan's work and the appreciation of his storytelling, right? Well, there's a few things that stand out, and we're gonna talk about all of them, all of the things that, a few things that we think that really make him unique in the genre. All right, number one, he's an auteur, right? Mike Flanagan directs, writes, and edits most of his works. Until recently, I think until about Midnight Mass, he'd done all three, but Midnight Mass he stepped back, which Raven will talk about why that might have been the case. So this authorship really allows him to have complete control over his creation and dissemination of stories, right? This allows him to really let his vision unfold without any interruptions or slights from anyone. From a product perspective, we always tie that back in. From a product perspective, this allows him to control all phases of his roadmap, right? Discovery, build, launch, and then iteration post-launch for the next content. And this allows, right, like as the audience, we feel exactly what this auteur wants us to feel. And, you know, like I've been thinking about this, like little things like little tropes like the glowing unearthly eyes that is very big in horror and not unique by any means. Flanagan has really made his own. Like, spoiler, guys.
Yes.
There's glowing eyes again in Midnight Club.
Oh, yes. And even though my first reaction, and you can call me a weeb about this, is that they look like the Shinigami eyes from Death Note.
Oh
I
my
feel
god,
like
shout out Death Note.
I feel like he understands why they're creepy, so he's not just giving everybody random creepy eyes. He is very effective in how he uses specific horror tropes because, and I think to tie back to what you were talking about earlier, in his product vision, he has the end goal and his target audience very clearly demarcated. So he's not flailing in what he's trying to deliver. He has very crisp requirements for what he wants to put in. So
Yes.
if this is not for you, for example, he's not going to force you to like it. He's going to show what he likes about it and hoping that you as a viewer will have the sort of emotional intelligence to understand that okay, there's beauty in something that I didn't appreciate before. Maybe I can grow to appreciate it or understand that it's not for me. He's
Yep.
not trying to insult anybody by saying that this is the right kind of horror and this is the wrong kind of horror. He says there's room for everything, but in this particular case, we're building something very specific.
Yep. Exactly. Number 2, his stories are incredibly personal and intimate. So Flanagan's a horror master, but he's interested in telling you a story about people, how people are, how they can be, their capability of transformation, which I get really emotional about, guys. And I'm not sure if this is the correct word, Raven, but I have to say at the start of his stories, it it's I find it almost taxing to watch them because they're so real and honest and empathetic and just earnest because
Yeah.
he's really pulling you in. And this, I find, if you can get past that, it has a massive payoff. It's definitely worth it later on.
I know emotional labor gets overused a lot, but I feel like watching Mike Flanagan's work is emotional labor because it either reminds you of things or makes you think about the type of things that we don't want to confront. And as a very natural protective response system to staying alive and staying healthy and staying well. But he does make you think about them in a gentle way. I feel that he's not really dragging it out and making it um, a very jagged experience, but rather something that is very smooth as an emotional process to say that there's ugliness, there is decay, there are, bad things within people that don't necessarily make them bad people. And you have to sit with that, and it can be uncomfortable because we're always told to hide those parts of ourselves or hide those parts of society or the structure within which we live. So, we're just thinking about things that we don't want to think about because they're not nice thoughts. So,
Mm, I love that you have bad parts within you, but it doesn't make you a bad person. Mm, beautiful. The life lessons we get from horror, guys. And this warmth, right? Like this warmth that he has in his stories, this like honesty and real place that he comes from, by no means does it mean that for horror to be good, there has to be warmth. There's a lot of like quote unquote cold, non intimate stories, right? That we love in this genre. One of
hell
the greatest,
yeah.
the greatest, the Blair Witch Project, Black Phone, as we mentioned. I
Freddy,
don't
Freddy,
find them.
Freddy, 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 Freddy,
Yes,
Freddy.
yes, yes. And they're perfect. They're beautiful horror specimens that don't have this warmth, but Flanagan's really found his strength and really found how to really show the horror in this sort of like subgenre, right? Dysfunctional families and group dynamics like in Oculus and Hill House, and delving deep into a single character psyche like or in Hush or Gerald's Game. Incredible. He does it so well. Number 3, he focuses on psychological horror almost exclusively and very powerfully highlights the themes of guilt, repression, trauma, acceptance. All the good stuff in the world. The running theme is in Haunting of Hill House, for example, the 5 siblings are traumatized by one event in their past, and they have to come together to sort of face it and move forward. Danny Torrance, for example, in Doctor Sleep, is is repressing a lot through his addictions, right? And Gerald's Game, for example, our main character Jesse is haunted by an unfortunate assault years prior that she's trying to work through. And it would be an easy and lazy way to make a story sort of where trauma is used as bait, trauma baiting, right? But by carefully crafting the stories and
Mm-hmm.
really how the story unfolds and inform the character's entire journey and how we see them towards the phase of acceptance and healing has been the standout in his work. And I really recommend, a lot has been written about the empathetic portrayal that Flanagan's works really explore. Um, there's a lot of articles. One I would recommend by Shudder blog that they wrote about Dr. Sleep. And we will post the link of this article, but it talks about how addiction is portrayed in a very sympathetic manner in Dr. Sleep.
Yeah. I think he also tends to focus on the post traumatic effects and not the actual trauma itself. It doesn't feel exploitative because he's not specifically sitting down with the actual triggering event, but rather how it affects the people that it happened to and how other people treat them because of it, and the way that we talk about healing from trauma, where there's an expectation of being able to go back to how things were before it happened and how that's not actually possible. So it's like that horror comes from grieving, grieving the life that you could have had, grieving what was taken from you. It's a very universal experience that many of us don't even realize that that's what we're doing, is we're grieving not only for the things we have lost, but ideas we have lost, things that could have been or the way things could have been. And that's a core element of horror, is being sad sometimes, is realizing that there are things that you can't change. And Mike Flanagan says it's okay to feel that way. We all feel that way. And it's like a group therapy session almost. So it feels very personal, like you're drawn in
Mm-hmm.
because it's so universal. There's nobody who can say that they have lived a completely griefless life, because that's just not
Mm,
possible. It's an
mm-hmm.
insanely intricately intertwined experience with the general being of human emotions. So you can't say that I choose to only live my life with joy. You can absolutely choose to live your life with joy, but that also means acknowledging the grief. And Mike Flanagan,
Mm-hmm.
I think, is very much about confronting stuff rather than getting away from it. And
Mm-hmm.
I would highly recommend that after you watch his works, that you practice whatever constitutes a self-care for yourself, whether it's like watching something silly and funny and light afterwards,
Or
or
a
just kind of,
bath.
yeah, or a bath, or like, yes, lighting some candles, getting like a scented bath going and relaxing yourself, or processing what you're feeling by writing it down or thinking about it and asking yourself questions of like, what is it that I'm reacting to? What really gets me? So
Yeah.
it can be, I guess, cheaper than therapy if you can't find someone to talk to at your schedule, which I know, like, looking for help on mental health is traumatic on its own. Like, it's such an arduous process, but like, this is a start. This is
Right.
a very small start.
Love that. Um, I would say, where were we? Yes, number 4 item. So, key element of his playbook is that he uses his regulars a lot throughout his works. There's a few names that he uses and recycles throughout his filmography, but to highlight Rahul Kohli, right? We've seen him in a lot: Midnight Mass, a Haunting of Bly Manor.
He's
Um,
also in an episode of The Midnight Club.
okay, I'm not that far yet.
Without any spoilers, you know that the entire process is sharing stories. within
Oh my god, it's
this,
beautifully
and
well
he's
constructed.
a character in one of the stories.
Okay, wonderful. His beautiful and very talented wife, Kate Siegel, has shown up in a lot of his works. Carla Gugino, we've seen a lot in a lot of his works, and a few other names, but I wanted to highlight, I guess.
Yeah, I was so happy to see Henry Thomas, because
Yes.
E.T. is a very like fundamental movie for a lot of people. It's their first introduction to Spielberg in a lot of people's cases, like mine. And I didn't really know much about his career, so when I saw him in, you know, both of the Haunting series and in Midnight Mass, I was like, oh, it's so nice to see Henry Thomas again, like a resurgence. And I think he really respects people from the 80s, because I think that was his formative years of growing up and consuming media. So, you know, the doctor at the institution in Midnight Mass, oh, excuse me, Midnight Club. Those, I'm gonna get confused between those names. The doctor at the institution in Midnight Club is the same actress that plays Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street.
Ah, okay.
So he really respects his like very Tarantino like in the way where he takes like
There's trust,
underappreciated
right? There's trust
actors.
in his, yeah.
Yeah, like there's something vaguely Tarantino-esque in the way he takes like underappreciated actors and gives them like these incredibly nuanced performances to play within. You know, it's like a character that they're really, really building out. I'm happy to see that he's giving so many people like second and third chances to come back and work with him. It also makes me feel like he's a good guy and he gets along with people, you know? a
Yes.
little parasocial development.
We love you, Mike Flanagan. Come hang. All right, number 5. His technical style is very unique, really works in this genre. Couple things. He follows the basic story structure to a T, right? Exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, but he plays within that very beautifully, oftentimes layering multiple stories and timelines within one thing. Bly Manor and Hill House both play with this. His framing of shots is really unmatched. The visual language I find very stunning in his works. I was reading an interview with the DP, the director of photography, Michael Fimognari, which I saw he's directed some episodes of Midnight Club, which incredible. In Collider in 2018, he mentioned that going in from day one, Mike Flanagan has a very clear vision and is very involved in crafting the visual pieces, symmetrically and gorgeously framing hallways and like mansions in between in transition scenes, and shadows in the corner are framed so beautifully, like not interrupting the scene, but if you just catch it, it's just like a little sprinkling on top. And these are all tropes we've known for a while, but he uses them very sparingly, effectively, and very beautifully. Another thing I would say, well, little to no jump scares in his works, except Midnight Club is messing me up. There's a lot of jump scares, guys. It's working. It all fits within the story of Midnight Club, but be warned. But as Raven mentioned earlier, that his bread and butter is building that slow sense of dread and unease, where really leaves you unsettled, right? And then the last thing I'd highlight about his technical style is that a sound design is a character in his stories, and I find it very
Yes.
right, like the restraint with audio is really admirable. I find the silence is scarier than like loud sounds in his works, like highlighting
Yes.
nothing at all for an uncomfortable amount of time. Frequent collaborator, Trevor Gates, he's a sound editor, and he said in an interview in 2018 with asoundeffect.com that silence is the key to Flanagan's stories, saying that in Hill House, quote, "We didn't want to make the house creaky because we wanted to be very articulate when we wanted to scare people." We didn't want to draw the attention to the house and make it creak unless it was a very specific event. Love this. And then
Mm-hmm.
couple other highlights, I'd say pacing is masterful. Dialogue is just incredible, which I will just stop there because Raven will talk about that later. And
Yeah.
last thing I'd say, he loves to play with grander themes of humanity, whether it be religion or morality or mortality and survival. He really makes his stories very visceral.
So, what I picked to talk about as my favorite work of Mike Flanagan, I think exemplifies all the stuff that you talked about, and that is Midnight Mass. So, this is a project that he's been trying to get made for like a better part of a decade. It's completely original, it's not based on any other works, unlike the other things that we talked about, like the Haunting series, which are both based on previously existing kind of interpretations of published works by pretty
That's right.
well-known authors. And his upcoming work is again like a adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe, so there's a lot to draw from the inspiration, but Midnight Mass was completely his own. So if you don't know, the spoiler free overview of the plot of Midnight Mass is that a sleepy New England community that's based within a group of adjoining islands off the coast of, I want to say Maine or Massachusetts. I couldn't tell from the accent. Sorry, guys. But this.
I thought it was the West Coast, actually. For some reason, I imagined it an island off Washington or something. I don't know because
Oh.
I associate. Well, actually, you might be right because horror on the Northeast just works
I
better.
picked Maine because Stephen King is from, very famously from Maine.
Yes.
And so that's why I thought that it fit with that whole thinking of like paying homage, because A, that is the reality in a lot of those communities, and B, the decay within that community, which is a big part of the plot, is that there are hardships from a financial perspective and from just being cut off and feeling isolated from, quote unquote, the mainland, from the rest of the world. There's something that feels particularly ripe for horror on an island because of the isolation. And so, this sort of sleepy community, um, that gets a revival within its faith because of a new priest coming into town, that stirs up community events and then eventually culminates in a lot of people reckoning with their faith. And so it's definitely not a easy watch for people who are struggling with faith.
Super chill, super chill.
So I think we'll get into full spoilers territory mood here, where Flanagan chooses to talk about the concepts around faith, mortality, and I guess moral purity, and the general ideas of consensus around good and evil through a classic horror monster, vampires. So, without getting into like the plot details, because I still highly recommend everybody watches this, I feel like Midnight Mass has just really great themes, and I want to go into this. The first is, death, rebirth, and the obsession with immortality. And the faith that is focused on in Midnight Mass, as the name should give it away, is specifically Christianity through the eyes of Roman Catholicism. And within the idea of that faith, there's always the concept of when you do enough good within this life, you earn redemption by getting into heaven. And if you fail to do so, you go to hell. So there is a clear cut line of morality being presented without any room for growth or ambiguity, or I would say even an evolution of understanding what good and evil is with the advent of modern life. The main character, Riley, has a very traumatic incident that kicks off the series in the very beginning, where he is um, driving drunk, hits another car, and he survives the crash. He's arrested and sentenced to prison for manslaughter, I believe. But the other person doesn't survive. That's why he gets the manslaughter, because it was an
A
involuntary
teenager,
murder.
not a teenage girl.
A very young person. So I think that also compounds his guilt. And he sits there in cuffs watching the paramedics try to work on the other person, and he is within his faith questioning why he survived and the other person didn't. He knows that he's clearly in the wrong, not just from a legal perspective but from a moral perspective as well. And he definitely has the lifestyle of somebody who put the acquisition of material possessions first. You know, he was like working in finance in a big
Oh, I
city,
remember, yeah.
and he was chasing a lot of things that didn't personally make him happy, but I assume he was told that it's what he had to do because he very specifically wanted to get away from his home community. So when he's finally released from prison on parole for good behavior, he goes back to live with his parents, who are kind of on the surface happy to see him, happy to have him back, but he doesn't feel like he's back out in society, and he feels traumatized by this death constantly. And that brings me to like the second theme, which is, you know, the idea of forgiveness and redemption and personal responsibility. I love that this has a clear cut way of saying that forgiveness cannot be bestowed, it has to be earned. There's a
Hmm.
lot of people struggling with things that they did wrong within the past that they're trying to come to terms with. The other, I would say, protagonist of this series is, um, well, in reality, it's Monsignor Pruitt, but he visits the Holy Land, you know, and meets what he believes is an angel. Turns out it is a Count Orlok ass looking vampire, which I really love that they didn't make it like sexy Gary Oldman,
Oh, not at
Robert
all. I
Pattinson
don't know
vampire.
if they ever. And speaking of vampires, they never said. I don't think that it was a vampire. You're just supposed to. Well, with
They don't
all that
use the V
happens, you're
word.
supposed to.
They don't.
They say angel.
Yes, they don't use the V word to like paraphrase Shaun of the Dead. They call him Angel, yes, because you know, in for all intents and purposes, he looks like one of those um paintings that you see within, you know, Renaissance paintings of angels with,
Yeah,
it's just a
yeah.
figure with wings. Which I've,
Non-beautiful version.
well, I've been told that biblically accurate angels are freaky as hell. They've got like thousand eyes and things like that. So, um,
I don't know what you're talking about. We're living in an age where we get like hot Lucifer, you know? I
I
don't know
mean,
what you mean.
that's the point though. Like Lucifer was supposed to be hot. How can you be the devil and not
Real
be
hot.
hot?
Canonically, he's
Yes.
hot.
Oh, I had a lot of fun discussing this with my husband, who was raised Catholic. I feel like we had to watch the series twice because the first time I was just pausing and be like, "What's that? Explain that. Tell me this, tell me that." And he was just like, "I didn't really pay attention in Sunday school, sorry." Which I feel really bad. I'm sure he's going to get revenge on me by pausing, I don't know, like RRR, and asking me, "Who's this? What's that?" Um oh god, wow. But yeah, there's a lot of, I would say they're using allegory of the Bible, but it's not completely alienating to people who aren't raised in the faith. I think there's Easter eggs for people who know the faith. But it is again in question of like Monsignor Pruitt goes to the Holy Land, gets turned, and in this canon of vampirism, he is a very aged man. He goes there as like a 80
Hmm.
something year old, and he comes back uh in his physical prime. So he basically reverts back to the way he looked when he was a 30 something year old man. And I think that's an interesting take because in most cases, like I remember very famously in the TV show What We Do in the Shadows, if you're bit at a specific age, you stay that age. And that's why
You stay that
Laszlo
age.
gets into trouble because he bit a goddamn baby. What a horrifying concept, because that thing is like a baby forever and it can't grow. So it's not growing old, but it also like means that people, if they were bit as very old people, that's how they stay looking. I think they can still, I guess, move quickly. But in this
Yeah.
particular canon of vampires, he reverts back to, I guess, like peak health, and he takes the angel back with him. He doesn't reveal who he is because obviously it's going to freak everybody out. So he takes on the pseudonym of Father Paul. And he basically begins like a spiritual revival by dosing the sacramental wine with vampire blood.
Mm-hmm. It's cool. It's cool. Cool thing to do.
I appreciate that Mike Flanagan shows us that priests are shady. This is not just from the anecdotes that my husband has told me about the Catholic Church. I think it's pretty well known that Catholic Church priests are a little shady.
We're gonna move on to the next thing.
I mean, it is a clear cut criticism of, I think, organized religion in general. I don't think he goes into like there's no God. Um Although Mike Flanagan personally is an atheist, and I believe that's a conclusion he came to during his recovery and during his sobriety. So that
Grew up Catholic,
he
no?
was raised Catholic and he's given up practicing
Yeah.
that, and you can clearly see that he um didn't just give it up to be edgy. I think there are a lot of specific things that he cannot reconcile with, and one of them to me again was that idea of like the sense of isolation that people feel, and the abandonment that people sometimes feel within a structure like organized religion that asks you to be a certain way and to not feel certain things and to only feel certain things. There's something very restrictive and controlling. And there's also the danger that blind faith puts you in when you don't realize the effect you're having on other people because you're so strongly guided towards what you think is a perfect utopia or a perfect situation of being, um, without thinking about ramifications or consequences. So Monsignor Pruitt, in this case, wants to go back and heal not just the community, but I think a very specific person, a person that he had a relationship with a long time ago, with whom he fathered a child, and ultimately wants to turn back time and spend time with them, spend time together as a family. And they realize towards the end that that's just not possible, that your choices have consequences and you have to live with them, that you cannot just simply ask for forgiveness and then be granted it without understanding what your actions have done to other people. So it's not as simple as like in this particular case going to somebody within the clergy and asking for forgiveness and saying 40 Hail Marys and that's done. You have to live with your consequences, like Riley's living with his, where he's been sober. He even is the only sole attendee at one point, but he goes to Alcoholics Anonymous with another person on the island who also hurt somebody with their drinking.
He's really trying to put in the work because the guilt is just
Yes.
like radiating.
And I think that's another message that I got is like if you feel guilt, uh you need to act upon it by either confronting it or making amends to the person that you feel you have wronged. And that there is a way out for everybody when they feel anger because of something someone has done to them, that they can be in a place where they still feel angry about it and mourn and grieve what was taken away from them, but not let that hold them back from living their life. um Midnight,
What other themes would you like to highlight for the show?
well, I just feel like within the concept of religion, um you have to understand that if you're Catholic, yes, maybe this looks like a personal attack, but speaking as someone who's not Catholic and was never raised Catholic, I thought that it was a really good rumination of death and how
Yeah.
ultimately all of our faith is based on the idea of that we're scared of what comes after life. We don't know, and we're all trying to figure that
Mm.
out, and we all have our hopes and desires about what that may be and how immortality is represented to other people. Sometimes you can be immortal by doing something, making something that impacts people for years to come, you know. um Imagine going back and telling Edgar Allan Poe that his work is so influential to the city of Baltimore they named their football team after his poem. That's crazy. You know they're called the Baltimore Ravens because of Edgar Allan Poe, and no other football team is named after literary work like that. That's crazy. But, you know, that's one
Mm.
form of immortality. Another form is, you know, through family, through what you put out there, but it's also just not about, you know, oh, I've created a progenitor, this is my biological son and daughter, and that's enough. It's like who you are to them as well, you know, like if they remember you. It's kind of like um the same theme in, you know, Coco and stuff, where it's, if as long as you are remembered by the people you love, you remain alive.
This reminds me of Sinister as well. Ethan Hawke's character in Sinister is kind of struggling with this. What is his legacy after?
Mhm.
Like he doesn't believe his family
Yeah.
kids are his legacy, and yeah. So the interesting theme that we
And
see, I guess, a lot
I
in
think
this genre.
famously Midnight Mass, when it was released, people were like, there's so many monologues. And I loved that. That wasn't a
Oh my god,
negative to
Hamish
me.
Linklater.
It wasn't just Hamish Linklater. I particularly enjoyed sorry, his real name isn't Matt Saracen. It's I'm a big Friday Night Lights fan, guys. The actor who plays Riley. I'm sorry, you'll always be.
He's in Midnight Club as
Yes, he
well.
is.
I'm gonna look up his
He
name.
has these beautiful monologues with the character portrayed by Kate Siegel about that very specific concept of what death means, what the afterlife means, and what they hope is going to happen. And I love like actors flexing and like um spraying the canvas with their acting skills and showing that.
Zach Gilford is his name.
God bless
Props to
Zach
Zach
Gilford and Kate Siegel for those scenes. I feel like if you first of all going to have religion in your show or movie, there's going to be monologues because that's what church is. So, I mean, if you don't like that, take that up with the church. But I love that. I thought streaming was the perfect home for Midnight Mass. I can't imagine this being made as a movie. There was too much to explore. It wasn't about the plot really. I wasn't concerned about who the vampire was, what his message was, why he even came back to the island with him, what Monsignor Pruitt's ultimate plan was. I was just invested in like what was going on in the moment. And that's because of how much work is put into the characters, you know, what they're telling with their facial expressions and their incredible monologues about what they're feeling now and what they've gone through. There's
What life is about too. I actually forgot it was horror because I was so invested in
mm-hmm.
Riley, the character. And then I was like, oh yeah, this is actually supposed to scare me when we
Yeah.
went to the angel
And
plot until they
and I would
combined.
say
Yeah.
that the horror isn't the type of horror that you feel, it's not shock. It's not the instinct of flight or fight. It's dread. It's slow building dread, compounding with everyone's natural fears about mortality, but also thinking about how they have limited time and what they've done with it, and whether they have amends to make for people. It's perfect for streaming. It couldn't be a movie, and that's why I'm so glad that Mike Flanagan has chosen to work with a streaming service. I think that it's up to you how you consume it, but for me, even if you watch one episode daily or maybe two episodes, I think that's perfect because you can let the episodes sink in and ruminate. I'm glad that Netflix releases them all at once so you get to decide your pace, but um I don't think that unless you're like really hungry for it, you should just go through all of them at once. Maybe you can do that your first viewing, but your second viewing, I would say let things sink in and ruminate, because the performances, the cinematography where it lingers and it makes you feel uncomfortable because you're being made to watch people sit in their grief. Like you can't turn away. You're not seeing quick cuts and sharp editing because they want you to sit in what it feels like to be in a small community torn apart by the world sort of abandoning them. You know, the island went through an oil spill that affected the livelihood of a bunch of fishermen, which is the primary industry within that island. So they're sitting in like financial and economic decay. It feels like you're in the past, and so it's just uncomfortable to see all of that decay and grief and sadness, and you're not allowed to be pulled away from it as soon as you get uncomfortable. So it's very purposeful. Practice self-care when you watch this, because I think that the themes are heavy, intentionally so. But even with the ability of binging, my final thoughts on this is that watch it slowly and really, really think about what every character's decisions mean, because that's the fun of this particular
Mhm.
series, is that everybody from the, you know, bitch Beverly at the church to
Mm.
the only Muslim family in this town, the only non-Catholic, I think, family in
Sheriff,
this town. Yeah,
our hot sheriff.
sheriff, played by Rahul Kohli, and the general, like, I would say the townspeople, of course, I think have a lot of good moments between them, but the big players are, of course, the Joe Collier, the other sort of town drunk that accidentally shot a girl in her spine, um, in his drunken episodes, and the performance of that actress who also shows up in Midnight Club, during their confrontation about what he did to her, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
let all
We see two sides of guilt.
yes,
No, we see Riley's as a drunk driver, and we see what was his name, Joe
yeah,
Collier.
sit with those
Yeah,
episodes. Like
yeah.
don't
I
burn
have
through
to
them.
say, Raven has been saying like practice self care. I definitely don't binge shows. That's not the way that I consume content. But this took me a couple weeks because I did take my time to finish this, really absorb things, go for a walk and like watch something funny and just kind of let it go, shake it off a little bit. Because if you like your horror jump scares, we respect that, we love it. This might not be for you, but if you want a little bit full of a fuller story that brings different genres together
Mm-hmm.
but is still a rewarding horror watch, Midnight
Yeah, there's
Mass.
like very standard creepy spooky stuff. The vampire is genuinely horrific.
Oh, the cave scene in the Holy Land was very
Yeah,
creepy.
the moment Monsignor Pruitt encounters the quote unquote angel, um creepy vampire surrounded by the desert, that was a unique visual as well. I think vampires are always in like castles or wooded areas, so it was cool to see them in um a desert situation. That was cool. The vampire comes back to the islands and starts like fucking shit up. It's eating like cats and stuff. So like pretty classic horror stuff, but yeah, a bunch of cats wash up onto the beach dead, and it's like horror, but it's also, ooh, it looks like a biblical plague. So lots of cool stuff for everybody, I think. But yeah, the main The main thing is the cake is the slow, thoughtful ruminations on death and forgiveness and redemption. And the icing is you have a creepy vampire and some fun horror sequences when the vampire is hunting for prey. So let's put the fun in Cross Dysfunctional. Welcome to Cross Dysfunctional. So, here is where today we'll be looking into the general landscape of horror streaming services. With two in particular, we'll be looking at Screambox and Shudder. So, the growth of these kind of niche streaming platforms has been outpacing the established streaming platforms lately. And that is ultimately how the not just the tech sector but the entertainment industry sector also measures success. So it's a good time to look at one of the most successful genres in the niche streaming, horror. So it has been garnering around $1.1 billion in box office revenue as of last count in 2019, and the same year posted an estimated $2.3 billion in global revenue. So the horror genre is one of the most popular and profitable genres in the entertainment industry. So that's why there's a lot of investment. And it makes complete sense to pursue horror for catering to niche audiences as a potential market in streaming because people are craving that content. So I was looking up an article from Vanity Fair around August 2022. With authentic expertise in their particular topic areas, horror is able to understand audiences' content and frequency needs more granularly and thus continually sate their ravenous hunger by filling the gaps that the giants struggle to address. So this is around like those niche.
Sate their ravenous hunger. Ooh, Vanity Fair.
I mean, I love the visceral imagery because horror is very visceral. So yeah. I think that it makes complete sense again because I don't know if we touched upon this in talking about the works of Mike Flanagan, but there isn't a lot of horror content made specifically for streaming either. So when Mike Flanagan came in, it was like a big gap in the market. It was all prestige dramas and comedies, which is what a lot of like TV in the cable and premium cable sector go to as well. So horror is kind of overlooked. So there's not a lot of competition. It's just American Horror Story that you can stream previous seasons off and then not much else. So the time is ripe. So I'm going to look into kind of the smaller of the two services, Screambox. Launched around 2015 and then it was acquired by Cinedigm in February 2021 and relaunched under the curation of management by Bloody Disgusting in September 2021. Hey,
Bloody
heads up.
Disgusting owns Screambox?
It is managing Screambox because Bloody Disgusting is also owned by Cinedigm.
Oh, that's cool. Love Bloody Disgusting.
Yes, and heads up, Kira, their HQ is in NYC. So, yeah, go drop in and say hi. I would say that the content within Screambox is like obscure horror, but very much leans towards the exact opposite of what we were talking about. It's like popularly known as midnight movies, a lot of grungy horror, low budget horror, and not a ton of well known titles. So as soon as you see the landing page and you see the posters of the movies they have, you're like, oh yeah, these are horror movies that you should watch without eating. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There's a lot of like gore, violence, projectile vomiting, like pretty cool shit all around, like classic horror stuff. But they have a lot of like good stuff on there that I definitely recommend. So they have a ton of like horror classics, and I mean classics. Like they have the 1920 film adaptation of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with John Barrymore. That's crazy. Like you can see 100-year-old movie on a streaming service. That's crazy.
Free, correct? No, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to
Yes.
pay.
So
Okay.
it does allow you to stream for free, or you can sign up for a subscribership. And there isn't a subscriber count right now. With the relaunch in September 2021, Cinedigm said that they were looking to acquire at least 7 figures within the first 36 months. And we haven't reached that time period yet. So we'll see if they reach it. But yeah, they have Nosferatu from 1922, The Phantom of the Opera from 1925 with Lon Chaney. They have The Night of the Living Dead, 1968, George Romero. It's crazy. Those are all free. If you have a paid account, which costs $4.99 a month, you can also see The Hills Have Eyes from 1977 by Wes Craven, and Cannibal Holocaust, an infamous horror movie from 1979.
I will say I am a huge horror fan. I've seen most things multiple times. 2 things I refuse to watch: Cannibal Holocaust and Audition. I'm just
Oh, I love both of them. And if you love both of them, you will really love this streaming service because that's what it's kind of focused on. Um, like I said, it's super cheap. You get like bundle deals with 20 and 40% off if you get like a quarterly or annual subscription. It's also available to be added as an Amazon Prime channel, and it's also available on Xfinity through your cable providers. So there's a lot of ways to get this. It's supported on web and mobile. Kind of low ratings on the Aster. I think their apps are pretty buggy. Um, and I didn't see a lot of uniform support across consoles for like Xbox and PS4 5. So I think the extent of watching it on a big screen is like your smart TV, or doing like a screencast on your web browser. I didn't see any parental controls as well, so it's like if you have kids, they're gonna be seeing some sick shit. Let me tell you about Terrifier 2. I don't know if you've seen the press around this, but Terrifier 2, sequel to Terrifier 1, has been
Terrifier is on Shudder. They're promoting Terrifier on Shudder.
well, Terrifier 2 was acquired by Screambox for exclusive streaming rights, and it's been playing in
Good for
theaters as well, where it has been making people shake, convulse, and puke and pass out in the theater. I mean, congrats to this movie. I don't know if people are soft or if they just ate like chili dogs before watching like a murder clown go ham on the screen, but I haven't heard that reaction to a movie like that in a long time. So good
We
for
just
them.
gave our love to the opposite genre, subgenre within horror, which is like building slow dread and not using this kind of overt sort of, scare
Oh, I'm
tactic
sure there's
that
slow dread when you see a killer clown coming up to you and be like, here's Clowny. And I don't know the content, I don't know the plot. I just love the fact that people are like going back to the cinema and puking on each other to watch a horror movie, because that's the kind of community feel. Like horror is so fun to watch with other people, and yeah, absolutely. I
Can
would rather
I
be going to a theater and throwing up than throwing up at home alone, you know?
can I just say one of my favorite things is, sadly, this is just a sentiment that's happening all across, not just horror. We're just going to the theaters less and less. But one of my favorite things is like when on an opening night, going to see a horror movie and with a packed theater,
Mm-hmm.
and the reaction that happens at a jump scare at a really particularly scary moment where people scream or like gasp or something like that, and then there's like a 5-second silence and there's laughter afterwards because people are shocked at their reaction.
Oh,
And it
yes.
just comes out like, holy shit, I can't believe I reacted like that.
I had the similar experience when I was watching Us by Jordan Peele, where the audience was just kind of flipping between yelling warnings to the characters on screen and then laughing at the brutality and enjoying it, as a carnal release for just the anxiety that they were holding in their body. So I completely get that. And it looks like Terrifier 2 is really pushing horror to that way again. So if you watch Terrifier 2, it's a good signal of what kind of content is on there. Like, so that's one of my favorite things about Screenbox. It's very unpretentious. It has a ton of like that grimy content. So if you're like, oh fuck this Ari Aster shit, I don't watch bitches being chainsawed. Congrats, you've got your streaming service. They have the ability to watch free with ads, so there's like plenty of stuff around that. If you don't want to sign up, that's cool. Um, and if you do subscribe, they have downloads for offline viewing. So you can be that disgusting perv that downloads it on your mobile phone and watches it on a flight while you're sitting next to like a family of five. Please do that shit. I love that shit. Um, so that's what I like about it. However, in kind of keeping true to its like grindhouse origins of a streaming service, it's also super buggy. Um, a lot of the cheap horror that's available on there, I don't imagine was made with a lot of technical investment. So I didn't see any 4K streaming, which, like, you want to see 4K when you're watching horror, but there isn't anything there. You're limited to 3 simultaneous streams. So I don't know if that's a concern for people if they get a streaming service, but like, yeah, no more than 3 people can be watching it at the same time. So maybe hard to do like sharing with your roommates or something like that. Uh it seemed extremely buggy. It seemed like
The
there was a
and
lot of crashes.
this is the Amazon Prime integration, or would you say the app itself?
The entire platform. I saw bugs on the mobile apps, I saw bugs on web, and I saw bugs on the smart TV application as well. A lot of
Well,
sign
that
in
sucked.
issues. The search function was really terrible.
Oh
Like,
Lord. Yeah, that really turns me off. Like I actually when I download a new app on my Prime TV, on my smart TV, I will check the search to actually assess an app.
yeah.
Search is like the quickest way to know if it's going to function well.
Yeah, guys, like, invest in your user interface and user experience, UI UX. Clearly they did this without a designer, because when you're browsing the different subgenres of horror, it's a very clunky experience. And I didn't see this for myself, but I saw a listing of subscription expiration issues where people paid for the subscription, but they were locked out of their account because, I don't know, something didn't go through, and they don't have a ton of customer support available. And I think that's just like growing pains. I'm hoping that with the Cinedigm acquisition, that means that they can give the proper attention to it. But yeah, I think it's best if you do decide to go through with this, um, with Screenbox, you do like a month to month thing, because it seems kind of iffy. And it's only
Well,
four
that's a
ninety nine.
bummer.
Yeah, it is a
Yeah,
bummer.
it's a bummer because I have to say horror fans, the people that really pay attention to horror tropes, just how horror is constructed well, are movie fans. They care about their cinephiles. They care about content in general, and you want to make sure your experience delivers, you know? You know
It's
what I mean? Like,
expensive to do
yeah.
that, in
Yes.
hosting video streaming
True.
and service. You need to have like a ton of, and I'm getting into the technical part of this, like a ton of architecture, ton of UI UX done properly. And maybe they don't have the resources yet, but who knows, with the acquisition they may be getting a cash influx. So i i I think that when we come back to this like 12 months later, if we do, we could see an entirely new platform, which I'm
That would
hoping.
be the hope.
Yeah.
That's pretty great. So it sounds like in terms of like their highlights, it's the catalog that they're really going, like the subgenre
Yeah,
of grimy
very
content.
very
Yeah.
B movie focused. Like I felt like I could see something in there with the title of like Cannibal Eggplants from Outer Space, and it was perfectly at home with everything else. You
Yeah,
know, a
and
lot of
listen, that is the subgenres within horror.
Mhm.
The B movies, like the grainy, low quality movies, that works for this genre. People love that, you know.
Yeah, I could see them like roping in Rob Zombie to do something, for example. Like I know he loves like House of Thousand Corpses, and I know
Listen, we're
he's
just giving you free idea, Screambox. Get on it.
yeah, because I was really put off by Rob Zombie's version of the monsters. I was like, um, this isn't his jam. I was ready to see like grimy monsters, and it was actually really kiddie friendly and fresh and squeaky clean. And I was like, nah, go to Screambox and do something like disgusting, you know?
Yeah. And then in terms of like the things that they're struggling with, the things that we'd want them to improve is more just technical and UI related. So that's good
Yeah,
to know that
they have a
it's something
they have a very strong product identity. They're not here trying
good.
to make the new Midsommar, for example. I don't think they
Yes.
ever will. They're not
Okay.
going to fuck over their clientele like that. They're like, we know what you're here for, and this is what we're going to keep doing. So, yeah. I
So
can't
I
wait to
love
see
that.
Terrifier 2 on the streaming
Terrifier
service.
too.
Yeah.
No, I love that because as a thinking of it in terms of startup, they've done something, they've established themselves, they have a product vision, they have their mission, they've done things right that an early stage startup should do. And little things are, you know, as resources and money expands, they will fix it. I think it's harder to have an app that is beautiful and functions and all of that good stuff without having a product identity, without having a good catalog, without having exclusive rights to a big movie, Terrifier 2, you know? So
Yeah, yeah.
good to hear. I will be keeping a close eye on them because I think we will see with this resurgence that's happening in the genre, we'll see them quickly
Yeah.
improve.
Yeah, I have hopes for them, and I wish them luck and success, and I'm happy that they're out here like filling a gap in the market. Yeah.
All right, we're moving on to Shudder, which is the bigger of the two services in comparison to Screambox. So for Shudder, launched in 2015 by AMC Network, so it already has a very big parent behind the service. Shudder defines itself as an unbeatable collection of edge of your seat programming. And this is a quote: an unbeatable collection of edge of your seat programming from Hollywood favorites and cult classics to critically acclaimed new releases you won't find anywhere else. New original movies added weekly. They have original content added weekly. This,
Whoa. The
yeah,
grind. The
the
grind.
grind. They have between, well, we don't know exactly, but their subscriber base is between 1 and 2 million. And but in combination with AMC networks of apps, including Acorn TV, which stay tuned for our assessment of Acorn TV coming soon.
Oh yeah.
They have they have a collection of 9 million uh, subscribers, on track for 20 million in the next 4 years, which they've really proudly announced and like really prognosticated. So, which is cool. I'm happy for them. The number of titles in their catalog. So, about 630 movies, including many exclusives and originals, as we mentioned. And Shudder Library also includes 41 series and 7 podcasts. They have podcasts.
Oh shit. Let's get on
They
that.
know what's up. Some highlights of their catalog. So they have classics, right? Evil Dead 2, The Wailing, Audition, The Tale of Two Sisters, one of my favorites, Candyman, Train to Busan, Terrified, the first one. Terrified 2, Screambox stole from them, which is good. Good for Screambox. And lesser known movies, but my recommendations: the Mortuary Collection from 2019 starring Jacob Elordi. Guys, incredible. VHS 94, which has been one of my favorite horror movies ever, highly recommend. Came out in 2021.
Oh
Host
yeah.
in 2020. Host from 2020 is also one of my favorites. It's less than 90 minutes, I believe.
That was a Zoom horror
Boom.
movie.
It is pandemic horror. And when I
Peak
mean pandemic
pandemic,
horror,
yeah.
it's not the like it's not horror like, oh my god, there's a pandemic happening in the movie and how do you deal with it? But it's actually just like perfect for pandemic era, because it happens on Zoom. Queen of Black Magic from 2021, Hellbender from this year, 2022, Stay Out of the Attic, 2021, The Boy Behind the Door, 2020, and The Witch in the Window, 2018. These are some of my favorites on Shudder. Highly recommend those. And these titles are incredible as well because this is just like a list of SEO of horror. If you're trying to just like market your movies, just like beautiful phrases that just work. Got In the Window, we've got Stay Out, we've got Attic, we've got, I don't know, like Mortuary, just like incredible buzzwords.
Very 360 degree of horror where
They
Screambox was like one specific corner. They're like, we've got it all. Come one, come all, folks.
Oh my god. I will talk about this momentarily, but Shudder is doing so many things right. And this Nerdist quote from one of their articles is so captures their essence. It's a quote: "If you're a horror fan without a Shudder subscription, are you a horror fan at all?" Truth.
I mean, you could be a broke horror fan.
It's true. It's true. We support if you just want to watch content for free on Screambox. You know what I mean?
Hell yeah.
We support it. Revenue wise, so they just became profitable at the end of 2020. Revenue, so is, again, we don't have these exact details, but it's about 5 million, less than 5 million, which is pretty great for an upstart little service. And combined with AMC's other suite of apps, the revenue is actually close to 1 billion. Not quite 1 billion, but very close. So, which is incredible. And then they do not seem to have a free tier. There's no ads tier. So it costs $5.99, $1 more than Screambox monthly, and $56.99 annually. So you can get an annual package. There's a lot of deals going on all the time right now, especially. So I believe you get 31% off. Just very specific 31.
Oh, October 31st is Halloween. That's why 31%.
Oh,
gotta keep it spooky.
Yes, perfect. And it has its standalone app, on all of these services, which I'll mention momentarily. But they're actually quite popular through Amazon Prime Video and YouTube TV service integration. So those are it's so funny because I typed in Shudder to download their app on my Prime TV, and the Shudder app did not come through, but the Shudder integration came through, which I was like, Prime Video, I see what you're doing. I would highly recommend the app experience over anything else, though. Like their standalone app, they've put a lot of money, resources, and love into it.
And just as a heads up, guys, we both are in tech, and we can say this with confidence. The native experience, what we call the native experience, is when you go through the app directly put out by the company itself, is always going to be better than an integrated experience, aka like what you were talking about, going through Amazon and getting Shudder. It's literally just numbers, guys. They will put more effort into building something on their own. But should the numbers skew, if like more people are going through Amazon, then they might like take some time to make it better. But you will always get a quote unquote richer experience natively.
Yes, 100%. And service integration is also if you're if you don't have that much money to put into your own standalone app, your native experience, it's a good way to like still get your product out into the market and kind of partner with other bigger companies that can handle the experience, and you just kind of integrate with them. So we covered availability, so Android, Apple mobile devices, Amazon Fire devices, Android TV, Apple TV, Roku, all the smart TVs, Samsung. It's also available in Xbox and PlayStation. In terms of streaming allowance, it seems that officially you can only do one stream at a time, but cable TV tested 3 streams at a time. So
Okay.
they cannot guarantee, yeah, which is interesting. Probably cannot guarantee if
Yeah.
like one stream doesn't, you know, like just
Once you put it
crash
out
and
there
burn.
as like a feature, then if it doesn't work, you have to be like, oh shit, we gotta fix it. But if you
Yeah.
don't put it out and it just happens to work, they'll be like, oh look, it happens to work. We're not on any obligation to like fix it if it breaks, but cool, good for you.
Yeah, imagine customer service agents just being like, wait, what? We weren't told. We weren't given any documentation. Yeah. And so that's a little overview. In terms of highlights of the experience, I would say just like the onboarding itself when you download, and I'm going to focus on the native app experience. When you download the app itself, you're getting this like beautiful acquisition onboarding journey, because you get the little like door creaking sound, the black background, and the large red font that like looks like it's bleeding. So it's just like very,
Oh,
I,
fun.
it's just so fun because yeah, it's like the Netflix to them, you know, they will never take that away because you
Oh
just,
yeah, the
the
user
brand identity.
delight. Exactly. This is like the key user delight points where you just add something for fun, but it's cute and it is specific to your product and it makes people feel happy about using it. That's literally just the simplest way to describe user delight, and that's what you
The
felt when you saw that, right?
never underestimate surprise and delight, especially in like early tenure journey, right? When you're onboarding customers, like it will go a long way. In general, very beautiful, sleek, and responsive interface, which honestly I was taken aback. I expected it to be very basic. And I've used it in the past, but I would say this year when I downloaded it again for, you know, Halloween time, incredible. I'm already seeing so many like I- improvements, and playback is very simple of actual movies. There's not a lot of controls, but it delivers what it means to. Um, they have one of my favorite things, which was really cool. So they have, obviously when you enter the experience, you have tiles of different things you can, different experiences within the app that you can enter, but there's sub channels,
Oh,
um
cool.
sub channels of like live things that are, you don't choose the content, so it's like live TV sort of sub channels. Right now the 3 sub channels that are happening are folk horror, slashix, and it came from. So you can click on any of them and you're entering a live TV experience of any movie or series that's streaming. um
Incredible that streaming has brought us back to the experience of you'll watch whatever's on TV. And we're like,
it's
this is
true.
so cool.
It's so true. But in one way, it's also like, because Shudder's catalog is so massive, it's also like it plays on the Netflix like surprise me feature of like,
Oh
I
yeah.
cannot
Hmm.
decide, right? Just give me something scary. So kind of removing that like barrier from the user to make decisions and just kind of giving you some love. I love little things like if you select a particular content and you read the info of that content, there's like the ratings are in the form of skulls. So there's 5 skulls, and they're colored
Yes.
into red, to reflect the rating. So 3 stars out of 5 is 3 skulls that are colored red out of 5. Little
Aw.
things. I love them. Great performance overall. Just like I didn't experience any timeouts or errors or like app crashing, and it was just very responsive when I paused and played and paused and played. It was very responsive, which honestly you cannot say for bigger apps like HBO Max. Like Cannot handle that.
I know, it's shocking when you see something like Shudder handle the responsiveness of your video player much better than HBO Max, and you're like, you're supposed to cater to a bigger audience. You can't just say like, oh, there's only 10 people in the world watching at a time. Like, no.
Yeah, incredible. And classification and curation of content is just next level. So we were talking about so many subgenres being within horror. There's subgenres within these. There's
Do they have a projectile vomiting subgenre?
oh my god, I didn't actually look through all of them, but I wouldn't put it past them because, like, listen to these. Some of the sections are found frights, okay, zombie jamboree, terror transgressive, full moon fever, vengeance is hers.
Oh, I
Y'all.
love that. I love that because I'm guessing Full Moon Fever is like werewolf stuff.
Yes.
I love that it goes to that and doesn't just call it werewolf shit. Love that it's creative and it uses these like cute little
Vengeance is hers. I just
yeah,
love
you
it.
know that it's like a horror story around like a woman wronged and coming back for revenge.
Yeah.
And
What was that movie that just came out, I believe, from Iran? A girl walks alone at night.
Yes, it was in the 2010s. I would like around like 2015 or 2014, something like that.
One of my favorites in this genre, yeah.
Yeah, great vampire movie. But also could be into that vengeance becomes her kind of. Yeah, okay, so that's really cute. That's cool and it makes you think, and I love that they adore horror and they're not shying away from that.
These are cinephiles, right? Like, imagine that you're doing a little horror party, horror get together in October. That happens a lot, right? And you're just like browsing this experience with people who've never seen, people, friends and family, and you're just like kind of having this like fun conversation on which genre to pick, right? It's so fun.
Every month feels like October if you go into a experience like this. And I love that they're such full-blown dorks that they're like, you have to know Full Moon Fever is werewolf stuff because you know the lore, loyal horror consumer.
Exactly. They treat their customers with respect. They're showing them that we know that you care about this and we trust you. And so they also have a watch list, which I really love and this is circulated very frequently right now. There's two sections within the watch list. So one is suggestions by director of VHS 94, Chloe Okuno. So she's suggesting her favorites, and the other section is by the Boulet brothers of Boulet Brothers Dracula, which love it.
Oh, yeah.
They're also suggesting their favorites.
I've noticed that Shudder pays a lot of consideration towards queer representation and particularly queer horror.
Speak on it.
And the Boulet Brothers Dracula is a ton of fun. I think that it harkens back to a lot of like specific drag shows that I have been to around this time in, you know, the gayest city in America. San Francisco has incredible experiences, but if you can't afford to travel here, I would recommend watching the Boulet Brothers Dracula. I think it's like missing that key element of the live audience interaction with you, but I think all the other fun of going to a drag show that is specifically themed around horror is captured, and definitely check it out. And there's like a ton of like really good focus on like queer horror, because a lot of the way that queer cinema could even get into the mainstream was through horror, because there were so many restrictions around like what you could show around queerness and sexuality in general. And so it's really cool that Shudder also pays respect to that, so I will give them props.
Love. Yeah. Beautiful. And let's see. I would say now moving on to some of the things that they can work on.
Now let's shit on it.
Yes. I would say like the first thing, right? We were talking about how beautiful their onboarding experience is. Sign up for it, at least on smart TVs, sucks. Like when you're signing up for the service, it is very, you have to type out everything with the TV remote instead of adding like a mobile, right, QR code where you
Get a
can just
QR
do it on.
code, guys.
Guys,
Onboarding
get
is
on.
crucial.
I almost, so the real talk, didn't do it the first time. I was like, oh, this is gonna take time. Didn't do it the second time, and I was like, oh my god, I have to do it, and just to prep for the pod. And I did it like third or
Yeah.
fourth time. Now, if you don't have to prep for anything, you could just be like, maybe I'll go to Screambox. You know what I mean?
Do they allow for like using your Google account or your Facebook account or something like that?
Nothing. It's literally a screen. A keyboard shows up, and then just the text fields.
Yeah, that's the same problem in Screambox's app as well. Like the smart TV app has you type in everything, and I feel like, guys, people are going to want to watch horror on the big screen as well. Like you're putting all the juicy sound design in there with all the squelching and the squishing. We want to hear it, and so improve your smart TV login and sign up processes.
Yeah, guys. Interestingly, does not seem to support offline downloads, which Raven, you mentioned Screambox does. So they
Yes,
have
it
not
does.
put
Yeah.
resources behind that. Interesting, because they're putting a lot of resources behind these like live TV type experiences, but they're like, people don't. Maybe there's research behind it where they're like, this is
Yeah.
super low priority for us compared to maybe grime heads love downloading content and watching it on the plane with a baby next to them.
I support that. Watch it on public transit. Watch it. Oh my god, if someone is watching like a disgusting horror film next to me on the train, you know I'm like hearing along.
Yes. And then otherwise, honestly, not much that I saw that at least at this time that they can start to, well, that I thought was missing. But I do have some suggestions because they are such a respected name within horror right now. And we are seeing streaming content expand on horror, right? We talked about Mike Flanagan. I'm wondering, with AMC behind them, why are they not working to get, they already have original content. Why is Flanagan verse not on Shudder, for example? Why is Blumhouse, Welcome to the Blumhouse, why is that not on Shudder? And maybe
Yeah.
it's just
I mean, the simple answer could be contracts, that they have existing contracts, yeah.
Or just like they cannot compete with Prime Video and Netflix because those are bigger players and ended up getting these bigger names. But it's really something that they should, their original content that does come out is really good. Like it just, it's really good, and it's not, because you go to streaming services and you're like, like that's churning out like new content every week. It's like usually low quality.
Yeah.
Shudder's original content is thoughtful and good, and they really pay attention to their catalog. So I think their content team should really get behind getting exclusive rights to bigger names in horror and spinning up universes around them. Marketing wise, I feel like I haven't seen anything about Shudder. Like, why am I not seeing subway ads in New York come October, come fall? Like, I want to see Shudder be advertised more. I want to go to Bloody Disgusting, be reading an article on IndieWire, and see.
Well, they're not gonna do it on Bloody Disgusting because Bloody Disgusting owns Screambox, so there's,
Tis true.
There's corporate hierarchy to actually consider as well. So maybe you're right. I think again with the fact that they're linked to AMC, I don't know if
they have resources to
it.
market. I never see any ads. Yeah.
I don't know if they promote it on like their cable channels. Maybe they're just like get Shudder and then, back to season 5,000 of The Walking Dead. But I agree with you that I don't see a lot of like print media, but I have seen it being discussed in the realms of media criticism and like entertainment news, but I haven't seen it being promoted. I see it discussed but not promoted. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And I do love there's a Shudder blog, as we mentioned before, the Shudder blog is really well informed about movies, about the history of movies, about this genre. And honestly, I'd love to see, because we listen to our episode 1 going into Amazon Prime Video's app experience, platform experience.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this feature called X-ray vision where you pause content and you can see information and trivia about artists and music and like just little facts and figures. I would love to see something like this incorporated on Shudder, where tell me why French horror is so valued, tell me why French horror is so prestige, why a director made it so big within French horror. You know, if you're selecting a French horror movie, for example, give me some context behind what I'm watching and where it comes from. And it
Yeah.
really adds to your CSAT, your satisfaction with the customer base, you know? The other thing I would say, little things that I was thinking about, just with not with Shudder, just other app experiences within this genre. It is not easy to watch horror, right? You have to have a thick skin or be
And an empty
be
bladder. Oh.
And what if you pause content on Shudder, for example, right? And a lot of we know that when you pause content, it's very few times that you're actually there's a big danger of losing customer attention and actually losing people at that point. Um, why is there not something like a notification after you've paused content, you know, with after 5 minutes saying like, are you too scared, would you like to try something like this, you know? Or like having meaningful features to really work with the user. Like if they're watching something like really bloody, tell them maybe they
Oh.
can start with another genre, you know what I mean? There's opportunity to draw them back in after they tap out.
Oh, Shudder
And
mommy. Mommy take care of me, Shudder. I love that. They're like, do you want some snacks? Do you want something to
do you want some
drink?
snacks, honey?
Do you want some fruit, beta? Like, no,
Yeah,
mom.
think
I'm watching like Cannibal Holocaust. I don't need fruit.
yeah, I'm
I
not gonna
need
eat for
beef
3 days.
jerky.
What is the movie coming out with Timmy C? Bones and All? Yeah, that's Shudder, guys.
The Army Hammer story. I mean, Bones and All. That's the one. Sorry.
It's true. It's true. It's the Army Hammer story. And last thing I do want to mention really quickly, honorable mention, love their social media presence. They're very engaged, very understanding of their audiences. They
Yeah.
play a lot with, they retweet a lot of stuff. They engage with Letterboxd from what I saw. All right, final thoughts on this topic. You know, I've been reflecting on my appreciation for the genre, and I remembered that as a kid, I used to watch this cheap, scary show called Ahet. Do you remember that?
Oh my god, yes.
And just so good. Like, if I could find it on streaming, I would rewatch. Like,
Yo,
Ahet
ZTV,
amazing.
put this shit out. Put Art on streaming. Oh my god.
So good. And I remember I have this like vivid memory of like at age 10 or 11 renting The Exorcist from the local Blockbuster, and literally, and it was daytime. I think it was my whole family just doing their whole like, you know, like they're just like cooking brunch, and like my brother is doing something else, and I'm watching it during daytime, maybe like 12 noon or 1, and it was so scary. It scarred me, but also fed so much into my love of what I was developing, you know, of the genre, into my love of film and stories. Um and then I was hooked on the genre, right? Kept coming back with films, Scream and Elm Street and Halloween and Camp Crystal Lake and all that stuff. And now, this year alone, as we mentioned at the box office, other than the sequels and superhero movies, which is now, this is the life we live, like they dominate the box office, horror has really, really left a mark with, you know, we mentioned Nope and The Black Phone, and now there's a new Scream as well. in the top 25 highest grossing at the box office, these all show up. These big names in horror all show up this year, with Scream actually dominating number one at the box office opening weekend. Now, streaming executives are aware of this, and to expand their subscribers or keep attrition at bay, they are doubling down on acquiring and producing horror content. Jennifer Salke, the head of Amazon Studios, when asked about the partnership with Jason Blum to create Welcome to the Blumhouse series, she said, quote, "We are now driving so much of our Prime engagement across the world through Prime Video customers that we fill our schedule with certain amount of volume." Okay, volume. She continued, "We have alternate strategies to make sure we're bringing in new customers, which this particular suite of movies and genre has been successful at accomplishing." So she's already seeing like this is profitable, and they want to continue investing in original horror content on their service. It is disheartening that we are seeing less theatrical releases of horror, but of, in general, of less theatrical releases of movies, as we've seen, like this is the general trend. But we know the landscape is changing in general, and we are seeing more the time is ripe for streaming to just take over, or sorry, horror to take over streaming, right? The time is ripe. And I'm confident that we'll only see this space thrive and become incredibly big on streaming. And yeah, we've seen it go through peaks and valleys, and but I believe this is an evergreen space that really streaming services can really hone in on. Fan base is endless. Fan base is all year round. Get at us.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts, Raven?
There's like a tradition to watching horror. I feel like, unlike other genres, except maybe like Christmas movies, but there's like a time of year where you say, I want to see a scary movie. And I don't think other genres really have that. Unless you're one of those people who really wants to go see a rom-com on Valentine's Day or something. I don't know. I just feel like with horror, there's like a tradition of like, oh, every year we watch, the Nightmare on Elm series, Nightmare on Elm Street series.
Do you
or
have a
the
tradition like that every year on Halloween? What do you watch?
Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yes.
But I also I love Trick or Treat. It's like a fun horror comedy. I also know that Krampus is a Christmas movie, but I do end up watching it on Halloween as well because it's fun.
Guess what mine is? It's a classic. It's an older one.
Is it Jaws?
Oh no. Well, we can talk about whether that's like purely horror or more.
I love Jaws because I think it is horror, but it's like, yeah, there's versatility in the horror genre. What
It's
is
The
yours?
Exorcist.
Oh, you do? See, I get projectile vomiting vibes from you, girl.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it's the demonic
Kira.
possession. I believe like the sub-genre that I really respond to the most. It's the
Okay,
little
you
paranormal demonic 3
you love
a.m.
like
shit,
the Omen and other devil shit.
Oh
yeah.
my god, it's all for you, Damien.
See, I love that we can revisit it and it doesn't take away like the fun of watching the movie. I know that
I
there
literally
may be
quote
even
that all the time to my friends to just scare them.
Yeah, I love the Sixth Sense. I love Manoj's work. M. Night Shyamalan, sorry.
Yeah.
I just call him Manoj like I'd really know him, but
our dude Manoj.
I love revisiting that, and knowing the big twist doesn't take it away. I feel like I still get a lot out of it. So horror has rewatchability, and streaming can really capitalize on that. So I think that that's a good space. I think it's also streaming is a good space for these underrepresented genres that kind of have been seen less in theaters or promoted less theatrically because they don't have that mass market appeal. Netflix kind of did it when they were like, we're gonna take the rom-com and we're going to put like effort into making it really respectful to the people who love the genre. I feel like the whole um resurgence around rom-coms on streaming came about because Netflix said, "Yeah, you're not seeing these in theaters anymore, so we'll put out a spate of stuff there." Like that whole series of To All the Boys and Never Have I Ever catered to like the teenage rom-com, which I don't remember seeing in theaters for a
Mm-mm.
very long time. And they have the opportunity to also now do that with horror, where you can get
Yes.
really specific subgenre stuff in there and say, hey, we're not going to shit on you for liking this subgenre. We're going to put all the elements that you like about it in here. And it's on the streaming service. If you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. If you do watch it multiple times. So it's cool to see that there's a better representation coming along with that, because uh, whatever gets onto theaters now, it's just like, yeah, they're all very, very formulaic. It's either things that make a ton of money or need to be screened on theaters because they want to comply with Academy rules for getting Oscar
Yes.
nominations, and nothing in the middle. So I don't think we'll see another Shining, and I don't think we'll see another When Harry Met Sally.
Yes.
And that's sad. Um,
Sadly, times have changed
yeah.
drastically. Yeah.
And I don't want to conflate those two genres, but I feel like they have a lot of similarity that way, because
You are right. Yes,
they're
absolutely.
they are a broad genre that contains a lot of different types of subgenres, and they appeal to a wide variety of audiences. I think horror especially is not defined by other demographics like gender. Men and women and everybody in between and outside of
Yes.
the gender spectrum enjoy horror. There's a lot to be said about it. There's an incredibly thoughtful essay that I saw about how body horror is a cathartic experience for people who are undergoing gender transitioning. So if transgender people have a different
Wow.
experience in watching body horror than a cisgendered person does, it's because of their experience in kind of going through like that second puberty, or experiencing not feeling yourself within your own body. And that's like a metaphor in a lot of body horror movies. So I was like, oh, that's why so many people within the trans community love David Cronenberg. Holy
I
shit,
was gonna say
I didn't put that together, but I was like, look at that. Look
that
at how
that makes
thoughtful
sense.
horror can be. And it's not served anymore. I know that David Cronenberg just had a movie go out this year, and a ton
Premiere
of
at Ken.
people,
Yeah.
not a lot of people watched it in theaters because it's like, oh, this is a weirdo freak movie. But I hope that it has a place to stay within like the minds and hearts of viewers on streaming. So if Netflix doesn't acquire David Cronenberg's pictures, I'll be very sad. But
Let's
um
do Shudder. Shudder, Screambox, get
or
at it.
Shudder and
Get
Screambox,
crimes.
yeah.
Crimes of the future. Oh
I
yeah.
think Crimes of the Future, for example, could fit in really well even at Screambox, because it would feel very much at home right next to like zombie cheerleader strippers or whatever. It's like weirdo freak horror, and I love it. And those kind of like niche stuff get ignored, you know
Yeah.
so i
Yeah.
just i just feel like streaming can come in and make it feel less ignored. And then there is like the nasty competitive capitalist bullshit that happens, could be a good thing sometimes if it works as intended, because if you see something succeeding in streaming, studios may try to replicate it. So if something gets popular on streaming, maybe a studio will say, let's make a big screen version of this.
Yeah.
Maybe
No,
that
those
will
are
work out competitively. So we'll see.
yeah, I cannot wait to see more services dedicated to this genre, more and horror fans honestly, because of all of these subgenres, they're always expanding. Like we can debate if Aliens or Jaws is horror to me, and maybe we'll have a different answer, but why not put them on a service dedicated to scares? and expand that service and get more people into the fold of this genre that we call horror.
Yeah.
And it's just, streaming is the place to do it, and streamers, like, our love and respect to Shudder and Screambox, but we want to see more. We want to see existing services do more for the genre and expand this.
Remove the choice paralysis that people face, where it's like,
Yeah.
at least narrow it down to genre, and make the kind of stuff that other people don't want to make, because there's always reasons not to, financially, like, or people be like, no one wants to see this, no one wants to do this, and you have that option to look into user viewing habits and what people want to see. So get experimental, get crazy. You're not subject to the same restrictions as like a wide scale distribution of a movie is. So I want to see that as well.
Yeah. All right. So with that is a wrap for our episode. Thank you for listening. We are going to return next time with talking about MoviePass. It's back, y'all. It's back. We're going to be doing it.
It's been resurrected from the dead like a mummy. Keep it spooky.
It's been great hanging out with everyone. Bye, full screeners.
Bye, everybody. Have a happy Halloween.